The day my son called me just the maid was the day I realized some wars never truly end. 23 years of military service, 3 deployments, and a lifetime of sacrifice reduced to a single cutting remark that hung in the air like shrapnel. My name is Claire Thompson, and this is how I discovered that the battlefield isn't always where you expect it to be. The early morning light spilled across my modest suburban kitchen, illuminating the collection of faded photographs and military commendations that lined the walls. Each frame told a story of service, of sacrifice, of a life spent defending a country that seemed to have forgotten me the moment I took off my uniform. I was 52 now, a veteran of the Army Logistics Corps, a single mother who had spent more time in military bases than in any permanent home. My son, Jason, had been different since returning from college. Changed. The bright-eyed boy who used to listen to my stories about military service had transformed into a bitter young man who saw me as nothing more than an inconvenience. When he'd come home, during breaks he'd barely look at me, his eyes always focused on his phone, his attitude dripping with a mixture of indifference and barely concealed disdain. That morning was like any other. I was preparing breakfast, my movements precise and calculated, a habit ingrained from years of military discipline. The bacon sizzled in the pan, and fresh coffee filled the kitchen with its rich aroma. Jason stumbled in, looking disheveled and irritated, his college sweatshirt hanging loosely on his frame. "Mom, can you wash my clothes?" he mumbled, not even looking up from his phone. I turned, spatula in hand. "Good morning to you too, Jason." He rolled his eyes. "Whatever, just make sure they're done by this afternoon. I've got plans." The words came out before I could stop them. "I'm not your maid, Jason. I'm your mother." His laugh was sharp, cutting. "Could have fooled me. All you do is clean, cook, and sit around. What have you actually done with your life?" In that moment, something inside me shifted. I remembered the scorching deserts of my deployments, the nights spent organizing critical supply lines, the medals I'd earned for meritorious service. I remembered the years I'd spent supporting our troops, the sacrifices I'd made, the family time I'd lost. "Sit down," I said, my voice low and controlled, the same tone I'd used when giving critical orders during military operations. Jason hesitated, then slouched into a chair. He had no idea what was coming. I opened the drawer and pulled out a folder. Years of documents, commendations, medical records, my entire life story carefully preserved. Each page was a testament to a journey he knew nothing about. "You think I'm just a maid?" I said, spreading the documents across the table. "Let me tell you about the woman you think you know." The first document was my original enlistment papers. Dated 1998, they showed a young woman's signature, full of hope and determination. Next came my deployment records. 3 tours of duty and logistics support, managing critical supply chains that kept soldiers alive in some of the most dangerous regions of the world. I pointed to a commendation from the Department of Defense. "This is for developing a supply route optimization system that saved countless lives during a particularly challenging deployment in 2005. Jason's expression began to change. Confusion replaced his earlier contempt. I continued, pulling out medical records. "And these? These are the records of my service-related injuries. The back problems from carrying heavy equipment. The hearing damage from years of working in high-stress environments. My fingers traced a scar on my forearm, a reminder of a supply convoy attack that nearly cost me my life. This isn't from a kitchen accident. This is from protecting your freedom." The stack of papers grew. Veteran support program certificates, leadership training documents, recommendations from commanding officers who had trusted me with critical missions. "I might be your mother," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm also a veteran who has done more before breakfast than most people do in a lifetime." Jason sat silent, the arrogance slowly draining from his face. He was seeing me, truly, seeing me, perhaps for the first time. But this was just the beginning. The real story was about to unfold. A narrative of survival, resilience, and a mother's unbreakable spirit that would challenge everything Jason thought he knew about me. The silence that followed my revelation was deafening. Jason stared at the Ya'ar documents, his fingers trembling slightly as he touched the commendations and service records. The breakfast I'd prepared grew cold, a forgotten witness to the moment everything changed. I knew the path ahead would be brutal. My life had never been about comfort or ease. From the moment I enlisted at 22, I'd learned that survival meant pushing through when everything screamed at you to give up. The military had taught me that, but my real education came from the years of struggle that followed my service. My mind drifted back to 2010, the year everything fell apart. I'd returned from my third deployment with injuries that the military seemed eager to ignore. My back constantly ached, a souvenir from years of loading heavy supply trucks and navigating treacherous terrain. The hearing loss in my left ear was barely compensated, and the mental toll of my service remained unaddressed. Discharge was a clinical process. A few handshakes, some paperwork, and suddenly I was civilian Claire Thompson again. But I wasn't the same woman who had enthusiastically enlisted years ago. The world had changed, and so had I. Finding work was my first battlefield. Military experience meant nothing to civilian employers who saw my resume and couldn't understand the depth of skills I'd acquired. Leadership, logistics, problem-solving under extreme pressure. To them, I was just another veteran struggling to fit in. I took whatever jobs I could find. Warehouse worker, night security, temporary administrative roles. Each job was a temporary bandage on a wound that refused to heal. Jason was young then, barely school age, and the struggle was relentless. His father had left shortly after my last deployment, unable to handle the changes in me. Nights were the hardest. After putting Jason to bed in our small one-bedroom apartment, I'd sit by the window counting every penny, planning every move with the precision of a military strategist. Survival wasn't just a word, it was my daily mission. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a temp job at a local logistics company, I overheard the management discussing inefficiencies in their supply chain. My military training kicked in. I approached the operations manager, sketching out a comprehensive restructuring plan during my lunch break. Most would have dismissed me. But Tom Reynolds, the company's founder, saw something different. He'd been a military contractor and recognized the value of my experience. Within months, I went from a temporary worker to a key strategic consultant. It wasn't an easy transition. I was older than most of my colleagues, a woman in a male-dominated industry, a veteran fighting to prove my worth. But I'd faced worse challenges in remote military outposts. Corporate politics seemed almost laughable compared to navigating supply routes in conflict zones. Jason watched this transformation with a mixture of confusion and resentment. As I worked longer hours, pursued additional certifications, he grew increasingly distant. The single mother who struggled to make ends meet was becoming something he didn't recognize, a professional, confident woman who no longer needed to apologize for her existence. By the time Jason entered high school, I had established myself as a respected logistics consultant. My reputation grew, not through family connections or luck, but through sheer determination and expertise. I rebuilt myself piece by piece, just as I had learned to rebuild military equipment during my service. But success came with a price. Jason saw my professional achievements as a rejection of motherhood. Every late-night conference call, every business trip, every moment spent improving our lives became a wedge between us. He didn't understand that every sacrifice was for him, to give him opportunities I never had. The documents spread across our kitchen table were more than just papers. They were a map of my survival, a testament to a journey Jason had never bothered to understand. Each commendation, each certification represented a battle fought, not just in military zones, but in the unforgiving landscape of civilian life. I watched my son, waiting. The confrontation was far from over. The story of how a woman dismissed as just a maid would reclaim her narrative was just beginning. And Jason was about to learn that some wars are won long after the first shots are fired. The moment stretched between us like a live wire, charged with unspoken tensions and years of misunderstanding. Jason's fingers still traced the edges of my military documents, his earlier bravado completely deflated. I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes, the realization that the woman he'd dismissed was far more complex than he'd ever imagined. "I need to understand," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I knew this moment demanded more than just words. It required the full weight of my journey, every struggle, every triumph, every moment of near breaking that had ultimately defined my life. The financial collapse of 2008 hit veterans like a second war zone. While Wall Street executives received bailouts, those who had defended the country found themselves fighting an equally brutal battle on the home front. I remembered the day I nearly lost everything, a week before Jason's 10th birthday. My small consulting contract had just been canceled. The company cited budget cuts, but I knew the real reason. A woman, especially a veteran, was always the first to be let go. Unemployment benefits barely covered our rent. I sold most of our furniture, kept only the essentials. Jason never knew how close we were to becoming homeless. Those were the nights I would sit by his bed, watching him sleep, making silent promises. I'd trace the military challenge coin I kept hidden in my dresser, a reminder of the oath I'd taken to protect and persevere. The coin had been given to me by my first commanding officer, a woman who had shown me that strength wasn't about never falling, but about rising every time you fall. I started taking night classes, leveraging every veteran support program I could find. Community college became my battlefield, knowledge my primary weapon. While Jason slept, I studied logistics, supply, chain management, business administration. I devoured every course like it was a lifeline. The local Veteran Support Center became my second home. Maria Rodriguez, a retired Navy veteran who ran the program, became my unexpected lifeline. "You're not just fighting for yourself," she would tell me. "You're fighting for every woman who's been told she's not enough." My breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a veteran entrepreneurship workshop, I met David Chen, a retired Marine who had started a technology consulting firm. He saw something in me, a resilience that went beyond traditional business metrics. When most saw a struggling single mother, he saw a strategic problem solver. David introduced me to a network of veteran-owned businesses. Slowly, carefully, I began building my own consulting practice. Specialized in military logistics and supply chain optimization, my business became a lifeline for companies struggling to understand the precision and efficiency ingrained in military operations. Jason watched this transformation with increasing confusion. The mother who had once struggled to pay bills was now hosting business meetings, traveling for conferences, building a reputation that extended far beyond our local community. But success came with its own set of challenges. The more I achieved, the more distant Jason became. He saw my professional growth as a personal rejection. Late-night calls, business trips, professional achievements. To him, these were betrayals of motherhood. I refused to apologize for my success. Every contract I secured, every company I helped streamline its operations, was a victory not just for me, but for veterans who had been overlooked, underestimated. The turning point came during a critical project for a major defense contractor. My team was tasked with redesigning supply chain logistics for humanitarian aid deployment. It was more than a business contract. It was a mission that resonated with everything I had experienced during my military service. For weeks, I worked tirelessly. Spreadsheets covered our dining table. Jason would watch me, a mixture of grudging, respect, and lingering resentment in his eyes. He didn't understand that each calculation, each strategic decision was another way of serving, not just a country, but humanity. The project was a success. The new logistics model saved millions in operational costs and significantly improved aid delivery speed. When the results were presented, my team received a standing ovation. Jason was there, watching from the back of the conference room. That night, something changed. For the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Not just respect, but a genuine recognition of the woman who had raised him. "I had no idea," he said quietly, watching me pack up my presentation materials. I looked at him, saw the young man who had grown up not understanding the depth of his mother's journey. "No," I replied, "you didn't. The story of my life wasn't about being a victim. It was about transformation, about showing that a woman, a veteran, a mother, could redefine success on her own terms. And this was just the beginning. The world doesn't hand out second chances, especially to those who've been systematically overlooked. I knew this better than most. My business had grown from a small consulting practice to a recognized leader in military logistics and veteran support services. But success was never just about money or recognition. It was about creating pathways for those who had been left behind. Jason's attitude began to shift imperceptibly. The walls he'd built seemed to develop hairline fractures, allowing glimpses of understanding to seep through. But I wasn't naive enough to believe our relationship could be repaired with simple conversations or professional achievements. My latest project was different. A comprehensive veteran reintegration program that went beyond typical job placement. Services. We weren't just finding veterans jobs. We were rebuilding entire career trajectories, addressing the complex challenges of transitional periods that most civilian employers couldn't comprehend. The roots of this initiative traced back to my own struggles. I remembered the endless job applications, the dismissive looks, the constant battle to prove my worth beyond military service. Each veteran we helped was a personal victory, a testament to the untapped potential that society had ignored. Our first major breakthrough came with a partnership with 3 tech companies willing to create specialized training programs. Veterans with complex technical skills from military communications and logistics were given comprehensive retraining opportunities. It wasn't charity. It was recognizing raw talent that had been systemically undervalued. Jason witnessed this transformation, though he remained mostly silent. I could see the conflict in his eyes, a mixture of grudging respect and lingering resentment. The son who once saw me as just a maid was slowly realizing the depth of my capabilities. The turning point came unexpectedly during a national veterans conference. I was scheduled to deliver the keynote address, focusing on veteran entrepreneurship and systemic support networks. As I prepared backstage, my mind drifted to the long journey that had brought me here. My presentation wasn't just a speech. It was a manifesto. I spoke about the invisible battles veterans fight after returning home, the struggle of translation, converting military skills into civilian language, navigating a job market that rarely understands the true value of military experience. "We are not victims," I told the packed auditorium. "We are problem solvers. We are strategic thinkers. We are survivors." The room erupted in applause. Veterans from different generations, different branches of service, all united by a shared understanding of resilience. Jason was in the audience, watching. I hadn't invited him, but he had somehow found his way there. Our eyes met briefly, a moment of connection more profound than words could express. After the conference, opportunities began to multiply. A major defense contractor approached me about developing a comprehensive veteran support program. The Department of Labor requested a detailed analysis of veteran employment challenges. Each opportunity was another brick in the foundation of something larger than myself. But success always comes with its own set of challenges. The more visibility my work gained, the more Jason struggled to reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the professional force I had become. Our conversations remained stilted, filled with unspoken tensions. He would visit, observe my home, office, filled with awards, strategic maps, complex logistical diagrams, with a mixture of confusion and emerging respect. I knew the real work was just beginning. My business was more than a company. It was a lifeline for veterans who had been forgotten, overlooked, systematically pushed to the margins. One evening, Jason arrived unannounced. He carried a folder, his movements hesitant. "I've been doing some research," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar vulnerability. The folder contained stories of veterans, their struggles, their challenges, their untold narratives of resilience. It was clear he had been digging, trying to understand the world I had inhabited for so long. "Tell me," he said, "about what it was really like." And so began a different kind of conversation. Not an accusation, not a defense, but a genuine attempt to bridge the chasm of misunderstanding that had separated us for so long. I realized then that healing wasn't about winning or losing. It was about creating space for understanding, for growth, for recognition of each other's humanity. The contract that would change everything was yet to come. But in that moment, surrounded by the evidence of a journey most would have considered impossible, I knew we were standing on the precipice of something transformative. The contract arrived on a crisp autumn morning, sealed in an envelope that carried the weight of years of struggle and resilience, not just a piece of paper, but a weapon forged from decades of overlooked potential and unbreakable spirit. Federal procurement had always been a labyrinth designed to exclude those on the margins, but I had learned to navigate impossible terrains long before entering the corporate world. My military logistics background wasn't just a line on a resume. It was a strategic advantage that most competitors couldn't comprehend. The Department of Defense project was unlike anything I had ever encountered. A comprehensive logistics overhaul for humanitarian aid distribution, requiring a level of precision that matched the most complex military operations. Most consulting firms would have buckled under the complexity. For me, it was familiar territory. Team was a mosaic of veteran talent, individuals who had been written off by traditional employment channels. Sarah, a former Navy communications specialist with a brilliant mind for data analysis. Marcus, an Army logistics expert who could map supply chains in his sleep. Each team member carried stories of resilience that went far beyond professional credentials. Jason watched this transformation with increasing fascination. The son who once saw me as just a maid now observed a strategic leader who could deconstruct complex logistical challenges with surgical precision. Our conversations had transformed from accusatory exchanges to genuine dialogue. "How did you build this?" he asked one evening, watching me prepare a presentation for the federal project. I pulled out an old military map, worn at the edges, covered in strategic markings. "Every mission starts with understanding the terrain," I explained. "Whether it's a battlefield or a business challenge, the principles remain the same." The project demanded more than technical expertise. It required a deep understanding of human complexity, how resources move, how aid can be delivered most effectively in challenging environments. My team wasn't just solving a logistical problem. We were designing systems that could save lives. Weeks of intense preparation culminated in a presentation that would determine not just a contract, but a potential paradigm shift in humanitarian aid distribution. The conference room at the Pentagon felt familiar. Another battlefield, just with different weapons. As I presented our strategic model, I could feel the weight of every challenge I'd overcome. The years of being overlooked, the struggle of single motherhood, the battle to prove my worth. They all converged in this moment. The room was silent when I finished. High-ranking military officials, civilian contractors, policy experts, all processing an approach that challenged traditional thinking. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, a silent acknowledgement of our shared journey. During a break, an unexpected encounter changed everything. General Elizabeth Hartman, a pioneering woman in military leadership, approached me. "Your approach reminds me of why we need diverse perspectives in strategic planning," she said, her voice carrying decades of hard-earned wisdom. The contract was more than a financial opportunity. It was validation, proof that resilience isn't just about surviving, but about fundamentally transforming systems that have been broken for generations. Jason began accompanying me to certain meetings, no longer as a reluctant son, but as someone genuinely interested in understanding the depth of strategic problem-solving. "I never knew this world existed," he admitted during one long drive back from a conference. "Our relationship wasn't fully healed. Some wounds take generations to mend. But we were building something new, not just a mother-son connection, but a mutual respect born from understanding each other's complexity." The federal contract came with unexpected challenges. Political bureaucracies are labyrinths designed to test one's resolve. But I had navigated more complex terrains during my military service. Each obstacle became another opportunity to demonstrate the unique value of veteran expertise. Our humanitarian aid logistics model wasn't just about moving resources. It was about understanding human complexity. How do you deliver aid in regions with complex political landscapes? How do you ensure resources reach those most in need, not those with the most power? Late one night, reviewing complex geographical data, Jason asked a question that surprised me. "How do you stay motivated when the system seems designed to break you?" I pulled out my old military challenge coin, a silent witness to decades of struggle. "Motivation isn't about external validation," I explained. "It's about understanding your own worth, independent of what others perceive." The contract was more than a professional achievement. It was a statement. A declaration that veteran expertise represents a unique form of strategic intelligence that transcends traditional business thinking. As autumn turned to winter, I realized our journey was far from over. But for the first time, I felt we were writing a narrative of our own choosing, complex, imperfect, but unquestionably powerful. The world has a way of testing those who dare to challenge its established narratives. Our federal contract was more than a professional milestone. It was a crucible that would test everything I had built, everything I believed about resilience and transformation. Congressional hearings are rarely straightforward, but this one promised to be particularly challenging. Our humanitarian logistics model had caught the attention of both supporters and critics. Some saw innovation. Others saw a threat to existing systems that had remained unchallenged for decades. The morning of the hearing, I stood in my home office, reviewing strategy with a meticulousness that came from years of military training. Jason watched me. No longer the dismissive son, but a careful observer. "You look like you're preparing for a mission," he observed. "Every presentation is a mission," I replied, adjusting my tailored navy suit, a far cry from the struggling single mother he once knew. The hearing room felt familiar, yet foreign. Marble walls, rows of austere government officials, the weight of institutional power hanging in the air. My team sat behind me, veterans who had transformed their military experiences into strategic intelligence. General Hartman's recommendation had opened doors, but it hadn't guaranteed smooth passage. Institutional resistance is often more complex than any battlefield confrontation. Each question became a tactical challenge, each response a carefully calculated maneuver. The primary criticism centered on our radical approach to humanitarian aid logistics. Traditional models relied on bureaucratic channels that often resulted in inefficient resource distribution. Our model proposed a dynamic, data-driven approach that challenged every existing paradigm. "Ms. Thompson," began Senator Richard Callaway, his tone dripping with skepticism, Your proposal suggests completely restructuring how we approach international aid distribution. That's no small undertaking. I met his gaze directly. Senator, with all due respect, the current system is failing those it's meant to protect. Military logistics taught me that inefficiency costs lives, not just money. The room fell silent. My response wasn't just an argument. It was a declaration of principle forged through decades of service and struggle. Behind the scenes, the battle was even more complex. Competing consulting firms, threatened by our innovative approach, launched a systematic campaign to discredit our model. Anonymous reports, subtle political maneuvers, the kind of institutional warfare I had encountered throughout my military and professional career. Jason became an unexpected ally. His background in digital forensics, a skill he'd developed independently, proved crucial. "Mom," he said one evening, spreading digital documents across my home office table, "someone's trying to create a paper trail to undermine the contract." We worked together, tracing digital breadcrumbs, exposing the intricate network of political and corporate interests working against our proposal. It was a strange intimacy. Mother and son, united not by blood, but by a shared commitment to integrity. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria Rodriguez, my old Veteran Support Center mentor, connected me with a network of international aid workers who had experienced firsthand the limitations of traditional distribution models. Their testimonies became our most powerful weapon. Stories of medical supplies delayed, food aid intercepted, humanitarian efforts compromised by bureaucratic inefficiency. Each account was a damning indictment of the existing system. Our team worked around the clock. Sarah's data analysis, Marcus's logistical expertise, my strategic oversight. We were building more than a proposal. We were constructing a comprehensive vision of how humanitarian aid could be transformed. The personal cost was significant. Sleepless nights, constant travel, the pressure of knowing that our work could potentially save thousands of lives. Jason witnessed this transformation, understanding now the true meaning of professional commitment. "I never understood why you worked so hard," he admitted during one late-night strategy session. "Now I see it's not just about the work, it's about the impact." Political battles are rarely won through a single presentation. They're won through persistence, strategic thinking, and an unwavering commitment to a larger vision. Our model represented more than a logistical solution. It was a statement about valuing human potential. Weeks turned into months. The initial congressional hearing was just the beginning of a complex journey through institutional channels. Each meeting, each presentation became a strategic engagement, carefully planned and executed. The turning point came unexpectedly. A humanitarian crisis in a remote region provided a real-time demonstration of our model's effectiveness. Traditional aid distribution channels failed, while our proposed system showed remarkable efficiency. Real-world validation is the most powerful argument. News reports began highlighting the success of our initial pilot programs. International aid organizations started requesting detailed insights into our approach. Jason's perspective continued to evolve. The son who once saw me as just a maid now understood the complex strategic thinking behind my professional journey. Our relationship, once defined by misunderstanding, was transforming into a partnership of mutual respect. As winter settled over the city, casting long shadows across my home office, I realized we were on the cusp of something extraordinary. Not just a successful contract, but a fundamental reimagining of how humanitarian support could be delivered. The battle was far from over. But for the first time, I felt we were writing a narrative that extended far beyond personal redemption. A story of systemic transformation, of veterans reclaiming their narrative, of a mother and son finding connection through shared purpose. The moment of true transformation rarely announces itself with fanfare. It arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly, like dawn breaking through a long, dark night. Our humanitarian logistics project had become more than a professional endeavor. It was a living, breathing testament to the power of resilience and strategic vision. International recognition came with its own complex challenges. The United Nations Humanitarian Coordination Team requested a comprehensive review of our distribution model. Each invitation, each opportunity, was a validation of the work we had been building piece by piece. Jason's involvement had become integral to our mission. His digital forensics skills uncovered systemic inefficiencies that traditional consultants had overlooked. The son who once dismissed my professional aspirations was now a crucial part of our strategic team. We're not just moving resources, I explained during one strategy session. We're redesigning how humanitarian support understands human complexity. Our pilot programs in 3 conflict-affected regions demonstrated unprecedented efficiency. Medical supplies reached remote communities weeks ahead of traditional distribution channels. Emergency food aid was strategically positioned before critical shortages could develop. Each successful deployment was a rebuke to the bureaucratic systems that had failed for decades. The personal cost of this work became increasingly apparent. Sleepless nights merged into intense strategy sessions. Our team, a diverse group of veterans from different branches and backgrounds, became more than colleagues. We were a family forged in the fires of shared purpose. Sarah, our data analysis expert, had her own story of transformation. A former Navy communications specialist who had struggled to find meaningful work after her service, she now led complex data modeling that was revolutionizing humanitarian logistics. This is why we serve, she told me during a late-night video conference. Not just with weapons, but with intelligence, with strategic thinking. The political landscape proved more treacherous than any battlefield I had encountered during my military service. Competing consulting firms, threatened by our innovative approach, launched systematic attempts to discredit our work. Anonymous reports, subtle political maneuvers, the kind of institutional warfare that required as much strategic thinking as any military operation. Jason became our unexpected secret weapon. His digital forensics background allowed us to trace and counter these attempts with surgical precision. They're using the same tactics corporate competitors use, he would explain, mapping out complex networks of misinformation. Our breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A small humanitarian organization working in a remote region of Southeast Asia implemented our logistics model. Their report was nothing short of revolutionary. Delivery times reduced by 67%. Resource utilization improved by 52%. Most importantly, they documented how our approach directly improved community resilience. The United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, became our most powerful advocate. This isn't just about moving resources, she stated, during a global conference. This is about understanding the human ecosystem of crisis response. Each presentation became a strategic engagement. I drew upon my military logistics training, breaking down complex systems into understandable components. Jason would assist with data visualization, transforming abstract numbers into compelling narratives. The personal transformation was as significant as the professional one. Our relationship, once defined by misunderstanding and resentment, had become a partnership of mutual respect. Jason saw me not just as a mother, but as a strategic thinker who had overcome systemic barriers. I never understood the depth of your resilience, he admitted during a quiet moment between strategy sessions. Now I see it's not just about surviving. It's about fundamentally reimagining what's possible. Our team expanded, bringing in veterans from diverse backgrounds. Each member carried a story of overcoming systemic challenges. Marcus, an Army logistics expert, had developed innovative tracking systems that minimized resource diversion. Elena, a former Marine communications specialist, created community engagement protocols that went beyond traditional aid models. The congressional hearings that had once seemed like insurmountable obstacles now became platforms for demonstrating our innovative approach. Senator Callaway, who had initially been our most vocal critic, became a reluctant supporter as our results became impossible to ignore. "This isn't just about efficiency," I told him during a private briefing. "This is about recognizing the strategic intelligence that veterans bring to complex global challenges." Winter turned to spring, and our project continued to evolve. We weren't just changing humanitarian aid distribution. We were challenging fundamental assumptions about institutional response to global crises. Jason's involvement reached a critical point when he developed a predictive modeling system that could anticipate resource needs in potential crisis zones. "It's like military intelligence," he explained, but focused on human needs instead of tactical advantages. Our work attracted international attention. Academic institutions requested case studies. Humanitarian organizations sought our consultation. Each invitation was a validation of a journey that had begun with a simple belief that resilience is the most powerful form of strategic intelligence. The personal cost was significant. Sleepless nights merged into intense strategy sessions. But the impact was unmistakable. Communities that had been overlooked now had a voice. Veterans who had been marginalized found meaningful professional paths. As the sun set on another intense day of strategic planning, I looked at Jason. No longer the dismissive son, but a strategic partner who understood the true meaning of service. "We're just getting started," I said, knowing that our journey of transformation was far from over. The contract that would change everything arrived on a morning when the Los Angeles skyline seemed to hold its breath. Sunlight cut through the downtown high-rise where our team had assembled, casting long shadows across strategic maps and complex logistical diagrams. Our humanitarian logistics model had evolved from a radical proposal to a transformative system that was reshaping how global aid organizations understood resource distribution. The Department of Global Humanitarian Assistance had been our most challenging audience, a group of bureaucrats and career diplomats who viewed innovation with deep-seated skepticism. Jason stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection overlapping the city's intricate landscape. He was no longer the dismissive son who had once reduced my life's work to a simple accusation. Now he was a strategic partner, his digital forensics expertise seamlessly integrated into our complex operational framework. "We're not just moving resources," I had told him repeatedly. "We're rebuilding human potential." The breakthrough came from an unexpected collaboration. Our team had developed a predictive modeling system that could anticipate humanitarian crises before they reached critical stages. It wasn't just about responding to emergencies. It was about preventing them. Sarah's data analysis revealed patterns that traditional aid organizations had missed for decades. Marcus's logistical expertise transformed those patterns into actionable strategies. And Jason's digital tracking systems added a layer of transparency that made our approach revolutionary. The morning of the final presentation felt charged with an energy that transcended professional ambition. This was about proving that veterans bring a unique form of strategic intelligence that goes far beyond traditional military thinking. General Elizabeth Hartman's recommendation had opened initial doors, but our work had to stand on its own merits. The conference room at the Department of Global Humanitarian Assistance felt more like a battlefield than a meeting space. Rows of international experts, each with their own entrenched perspectives. "Ms. Thompson," began Dr. Helena Rodriguez, the lead coordinator, "your proposal suggests a fundamental reimagining of humanitarian aid distribution." "That's no small claim." I met her gaze directly, decades of military training evident in my posture. "Dr. Rodriguez, our current system treats humanitarian aid as a transaction. We're proposing to treat it as a strategic ecosystem." The room fell, silent. Behind me, Jason managed our digital presentation. Complex data visualizations that transformed abstract numbers into compelling narratives of human potential. Our model wasn't just about moving resources more efficiently. It was about understanding the intricate human dynamics of crisis zones. How do you deliver aid in regions with complex political landscapes? How do you ensure resources reach those most in need, not those with the most power? Each slide told a story of systemic transformation. Pilot programs in 3 conflict-affected regions had demonstrated unprecedented efficiency. Medical supplies reached remote communities weeks ahead of traditional distribution channels. Emergency food aid was strategically positioned before critical shortages could develop. The personal cost of this work had been significant. Sleepless nights merged into intense strategy sessions. Our team, a diverse group of veterans from different branches and backgrounds, had become more than colleagues. We were a family forged in the fires of shared purpose. Political battles are rarely won through a single presentation. They're won through persistence, strategic thinking, and an unwavering commitment to a larger vision. Our model represented more than a logistical solution. It was a statement about valuing human potential. During a break, an unexpected encounter changed everything. A veteran from the State Department approached me, her eyes carrying the same familiar intensity. I recognized from my own military service. "Your approach," she said quietly, "is exactly what we've been missing. It's not about aid, it's about empowerment." The afternoon session became a turning point. Our predictive modeling system demonstrated the ability to anticipate humanitarian crises before they reached critical stages. It wasn't just about responding to emergencies, it was about preventing them. Jason's contribution became particularly notable. His digital forensics background allowed us to trace complex resource distribution patterns that traditional systems had overlooked. "It's like military intelligence," he explained to a group of skeptical diplomats, but focused on human needs instead of tactical advantages. The personal transformation was as significant as the professional one. Our relationship, once defined by misunderstanding and resentment, had become a partnership of mutual respect. Jason saw me not just as a mother, but as a strategic thinker who had overcome systemic barriers. "I never understood the depth of your resilience," he admitted during a quiet moment between presentations. "Now I see it's not just about surviving. It's about fundamentally reimagining what's possible." As the day progressed, the initial skepticism began to transform. International aid organizations started seeing our approach not as a radical proposal, but as a necessary evolution in humanitarian support. The final presentation felt like a culmination of a journey that had begun decades ago. Not just my professional journey, but a broader narrative of veteran resilience and strategic intelligence. Dr. Rodriguez approached me after the final session. Her demeanor noticeably changed. "Ms. Thompson," she said, "I believe we need to discuss implementation strategies." Those words carried the weight of validation, not just for me, but for every veteran who had been told their skills were limited to traditional military roles. As we left the conference center, the Los Angeles sunlight seemed different, brighter, more purposeful. Jason walked beside me, no longer the son who had once dismissed my professional aspirations, but a strategic partner who understood the true meaning of service. "We're just getting started," I said, knowing that our journey of transformation was far from over. The contract was more than a professional achievement. It was a declaration, a testament to the power of resilience, strategic thinking, and the unbreakable spirit of those who dare to reimagine what's possible. The aftermath of our humanitarian logistics contract was nothing short of a seismic shift in global aid distribution. What had begun as a radical proposal had transformed into a comprehensive system that challenged every existing paradigm of international support. Implementation became our greatest challenge, transforming theoretical models into practical, on-the-ground solutions required a level of strategic thinking that went far beyond traditional consulting approaches. Our team became more than consultants. We were architects of a new humanitarian support ecosystem. The first major deployment tested every aspect of our methodology. A complex humanitarian crisis in a remote region of Southeast Asia provided the ultimate proving ground. Traditional aid distribution channels had failed repeatedly in this area. Political instability, geographical challenges, and systemic corruption had rendered previous efforts nearly impossible. Our approach was different. Instead of a top-down model, we developed a community-centered strategy that empowered local leadership. Sarah's predictive data modeling identified potential resource needs months before traditional systems would have recognized the emerging crisis. Marcus's logistical expertise created supply chain routes that navigated complex political landscapes. Jason's contribution became particularly crucial. His digital tracking system added a layer of transparency that was unprecedented in humanitarian aid distribution. We're not just moving resources, he explained during a strategy session. We're creating a real-time map of human needs. The personal transformation continued to mirror our professional journey. Our relationship, once defined by misunderstanding and resentment, had become a partnership of mutual respect and shared purpose. Jason saw me not just as a mother, but as a strategic thinker who had overcome systemic barriers. International recognition came with its own complex challenges. The United Nations Humanitarian Coordination Team requested a comprehensive review of our distribution model. Each invitation, each opportunity, was a validation of the work we had been building piece by piece. Our team expanded, bringing in veterans from diverse backgrounds. Each member carried a story of overcoming systemic challenges. Elena, a former Marine communications specialist, developed community engagement protocols that went beyond traditional aid models. Marcus continued to refine our logistical approaches, drawing from years of military supply chain experience. The political landscape proved more treacherous than any battlefield I had encountered during my military service. Competing consulting firms, threatened by our innovative approach, launched systematic attempts to discredit our work. Anonymous reports, subtle political maneuvers, the kind of institutional warfare that required as much strategic thinking as any military operation. During a critical international conference in Geneva, our approach faced its most significant public scrutiny. Representatives from global aid organizations, government agencies, and humanitarian groups gathered to evaluate our methodology. This isn't just about moving resources, I explained to a room of skeptical experts. This is about understanding the human ecosystem of crisis response. The breakthrough came from unexpected data. Our pilot programs had demonstrated remarkable efficiency. Delivery times reduced by 67%. Resource utilization improved by 52%. Most critically, we had documented how our approach directly improved community resilience. Jason's role became increasingly significant. His digital forensics background allowed us to trace and counter attempts to undermine our work with surgical precision. They're using the same tactics corporate competitors use, he would explain, mapping out complex networks of misinformation. 7 years had passed since our initial breakthrough. The world had witnessed a fundamental reimagining of humanitarian support, with our approach becoming the global standard for crisis response and resource distribution. What had begun as a radical proposal had transformed entire systems of international aid. Our global headquarters had expanded beyond the original Los Angeles base, with strategic innovation centers now spanning 3 continents. Veterans from diverse backgrounds continued to form the core of our strategic team, each bringing a unique perspective shaped by years of service and personal struggle. Jason stood at the forefront of our most ambitious project yet, a comprehensive, global initiative that would challenge every existing paradigm of humanitarian support. The digital tracking and predictive modeling systems he had developed had become the gold standard in resource management and crisis anticipation. We're creating a living, breathing ecosystem of human support, he explained during a critical international conference. The statement carried the weight of our shared journey, from misunderstanding to mutual respect, from a dismissive relationship to a partnership of profound strategic alignment. The personal transformation continued to mirror our professional evolution. Our relationship had become a powerful narrative of redemption, understanding, and shared purpose. Each challenge we faced became an opportunity to understand each other more deeply, to break down the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. Our breakthrough came from an unprecedented collaboration with indigenous communities, technological innovators, and humanitarian experts from around the globe. We had developed a holistic approach that went far beyond traditional resource distribution. We were creating a dynamic system of human support that anticipated needs before they became critical. Sarah's predictive data modeling had reached a level of sophistication that seemed almost miraculous. She could now anticipate humanitarian crises with a precision that challenged everything we thought we knew about crisis response. Marcus continued to refine logistical approaches that seemed to defy the limitations of traditional humanitarian support. The international recognition had transformed from validation to global leadership. The United Nations had not just adopted our methodology, they had integrated it as a fundamental approach to humanitarian support. Academic institutions worldwide studied our model as a revolutionary framework for understanding human resilience. During a critical global summit in Geneva, our team presented a comprehensive analysis of our 7-year impact. The numbers were more than impressive, they were transformative. Resource delivery efficiency had increased by 85%. Community resilience in supported regions had improved by 76%. Most critically, we had created a model that respected local leadership, cultural contexts, and human dignity. This isn't about charity, I explained to a room of international experts, policymakers, and humanitarian leaders. This is about recognizing human potential, about creating systems that empower rather than simply support. The personal cost continued to be substantial. Sleepless nights, intense strategy sessions, continuous innovation. Our team had become more than a professional network. We were a family forged in the fires of shared purpose, each member carrying a story of overcoming systemic challenges. Jason's journey remained a powerful narrative of transformation. From a son who had once dismissed my professional aspirations to a critical strategic partner, his evolution was a testament to the power of understanding, mutual respect, and shared purpose. I never understood the depth of your resilience, he admitted during a quiet moment between presentations. Now I see that resilience isn't about surviving. It's about fundamentally reimagining what's possible. Our work had attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Military strategists, technological innovators, policymakers, humanitarian organizations, all sought to understand the deeper principles behind our approach. We had created more than a consulting model. We had developed an entirely new way of thinking about human support and resource distribution. The most powerful validation continued to come from the communities we served. In remote villages, in conflict-ridden regions, in areas previously considered impossible to support, local leaders shared stories of transformation. Our approach had become more than a methodology. It was a lifeline of hope and possibility. One particularly memorable moment came during a visit to a community in the Amazon rainforest. A local leader approached me, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and newfound empowerment. "You didn't just bring resources," she said. "You brought the possibility of a different future." Political and institutional challenges continued to test our approach. Traditional aid organizations, bureaucratic systems, competing consulting firms, all attempted to undermine our work. But our methodology had proven its resilience. Our data, our impact, our approach spoke louder than any criticism. Jason's digital forensics skills remained crucial in navigating these challenges. He could trace and counter attempts to discredit our work with surgical precision, mapping out complex networks of misinformation and institutional resistance. Our veteran Support Initiative had become a critical global program. We didn't just hire veterans. We created comprehensive pathways for professional development, recognizing the unique skills and perspectives that military service provides. Elena continued to develop community engagement protocols that went far beyond traditional aid models. Marcus refined logistical approaches that seemed to defy traditional thinking. Each team member brought a unique perspective shaped by service, struggle, and an unwavering commitment to human potential. The relationship between Jason and me had evolved into something beyond traditional mother-son dynamics. We were strategic partners, united by a shared vision of what was possible when human potential was truly recognized and supported. "We're not just reimagining systems," Jason said during one intense strategy session. "We're reimagining human potential." As we prepared for our most ambitious global initiative yet, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From a struggling single mother to a global humanitarian innovation leader, from a dismissive son to a strategic partner, our story was a testament to the power of transformation. The setting sun cast long shadows across our global headquarters, metaphor for the distance we had traveled. Our journey was far from over. We were just beginning to understand the true potential of our work, of our relationship, of human resilience. Some stories demand to be rewritten. Ours was proof that transformation is not just possible, it is inevitable. The final chapter of our journey arrived not with a thunderous revelation, but with a quiet understanding that transformed everything we thought we knew about resilience, family, and human potential. 9 years had passed since that pivotal moment when Jason first began to understand the depth of my professional journey. Our humanitarian logistics model had become more than a global standard. It was a living testament to the power of transformation, a beacon of hope for communities around the world. Our Global Innovation Center had become a sanctuary of possibility. Veterans, humanitarian experts, technological innovators, all converged to create solutions that went far beyond traditional aid models. Each room told a story of resilience, of turning personal struggles into systemic change. The Phoenix Initiative, our most ambitious project yet, was about to launch. Named after the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes, the program represented the culmination of everything we had built. It wasn't just about humanitarian support. It was about creating pathways for human potential in the most challenging environments imaginable. Jason stood beside me during the final presentation, no longer the dismissive son but a strategic partner who had become the heart of our technological innovation. His digital tracking systems had revolutionized how we understood and responded to global humanitarian challenges. "We're not just moving resources," he explained to a room of international experts, policymakers, and humanitarian leaders. "We're creating a living, breathing ecosystem of human support." The journey had been anything but linear. We had faced institutional resistance, personal challenges, and moments of profound doubt. But each obstacle had become an opportunity for growth, for reimagining what was possible. Our team had become a family forged in the fires of shared purpose. Sarah's predictive data modeling could now anticipate humanitarian crises with a precision that seemed almost miraculous. Marcus continued to develop logistical approaches that defied traditional thinking. Elena had created community engagement protocols that respected local leadership and cultural contexts. The international recognition had transformed into global leadership. The United Nations had not just adopted our methodology, they had integrated it as a fundamental approach to humanitarian support. Academic institutions worldwide studied our model as a revolutionary framework for understanding human resilience. During the final presentation of the Phoenix Initiative, the numbers told a story more powerful than words. Resource delivery efficiency had increased by 92%. Community resilience in supported regions had improved by 85%. We had created a system That did more than provide aid. It empowered entire communities to reimagine their future. This is about human dignity, I explained, my voice carrying the weight of decades of struggle and transformation. It's about recognizing that every individual has the potential to create change. The most powerful moments came from the communities we served. Video testimonials from remote villages, conflict-ridden regions, areas previously considered impossible to support, told stories of transformation. Children who had once faced impossible odds now spoke of education, of hope, of possibility. One particular moment stood out. A young woman from a remote community in Southeast Asia shared her story. "You didn't just bring resources," she said, her eyes bright with determination. "You brought the possibility of a different future." Jason's journey remained a powerful narrative of personal transformation. From a son who had once dismissed my professional aspirations to a critical strategic partner, his evolution was a testament to the power of understanding and mutual respect. "I never understood the depth of your resilience," he admitted during a quiet moment before the final presentation. "Now I see that resilience isn't about surviving. It's about fundamentally reimagining what's possible." Our Veteran Support Initiative had become a global program that did more than provide jobs. We created comprehensive pathways for professional development, recognizing the unique skills and perspectives that military service provides. Each veteran became not just an employee, but a critical architect of change. The political and institutional challenges never truly disappeared. Traditional aid organizations, bureaucratic systems, competing consulting firms, all continued to test our approach. But our methodology had proven its resilience. Our impact spoke louder than any criticism. As the presentation concluded, the OIA room was silent. Not from shock, but from a collective understanding that we had witnessed something transformative. The Phoenix Initiative was more than a project. It was a declaration of human potential. Jason turned to me, a smile that carried years of understanding passing between us. "We're not done," he said. It wasn't a statement of ambition, but a recognition of our ongoing journey. The setting sun cast long shadows across our global headquarters, a metaphor for the distance we had traveled. From a struggling single mother and a dismissive son, to global innovators who had reimagined humanitarian support, our story was a testament to the power of transformation. To our listeners, our viewers, our fellow travelers on this journey of resilience, this is more than just a story. It's an invitation to believe in the power of transformation, an invitation to see beyond limitations, an invitation to recognize that your greatest strength lies in your ability to rise, to reimagine, to rewrite your story. If our journey has touched you, if it has sparked something within you, subscribe to our channel, follow our story, join our mission of creating possibility, because some stories are meant to be shared, some journeys are meant to inspire, and this is just the beginning.